Ontario's energy minister has announced a major plan to refurbish the more than 50-year-old Pickering nuclear generating station. The proposed new work is aimed at keeping the plant operating for another 30 years. It comes as the province is forecasting that demand for electricity will increase sharply in the coming decades. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick joins me now from that power plant in Pickering. So, Megan, last hour we had this announcement. What were the key points in the plan?
Yeah, we're hearing from the Energy Minister, Todd Smith, that the government is supporting this idea of basically giving this power plant a lifeline and supporting the idea of refurbishing it instead of closing it down. So the idea is to refurbish 4 different units here. They're collectively known as the B units. They've been operating since about the mid-1980s, so quite some time now. Refurbishing them, Hillary, will be a long and expensive project. We don't have a final price tag, though. What we heard at the news conference was that Ontario Power Generation is budgeting about $2 billion just for the first phase alone of refurbishing the reactors here. That would include doing some engineering and design work and also going ahead and placing some orders with some suppliers. We heard at the news conference they said they don't have a final estimate for a total cost of this project just yet. They got to get through the first couple phases of it. As for the timeline, they're expecting for the project to be completed sometime in the mid-2030s. Now, important here to know, this project still has to be approved by the federal regulator. What we heard at the news conference is that they are confident they will get that approval. They say they have experience applying for these approvals because of projects that are underway at Darlington and Bruce as well. In terms of what this will mean for Ontario's power grid, here's a little bit of Energy Minister Todd Smith.
Province still needs this station and its workers, and this refurbishment, effectively a major overhaul of 4 of the generators, is going to have a huge impact. Once completely refurbished, the station will produce 2,000 megawatts of safe, reliable, and clean electricity. That's enough to power 2 million homes.
So jobs, more power. He defended this decision. But again, there's still some details yet to be learned, Hillary. But this was quite a major announcement for the Ontario government to signal its support for this project.
And why is the province doing this?
Well, in part because Ontario needs more energy. So there is a growing population, growing increased demand for power. And the Ford government's putting quite a big focus on nuclear energy. They are supporting those projects at the other stations, including at Bruce and Darlington, building other small modular reactors. They say they think and they hope that this will also make Ontario a more attractive place to do business. And this is an important industry here locally, and that's what we heard from Pickering's Mayor Kevin Ash. This plant is due to close in 2025. Now, it has applied to the federal regulator to have some of its operating licenses extended until 2026, and then in the meantime now we'll be applying for to have this refurbishment project approved that would keep this plant going for another 30 years. And of course, that's extremely important to this local community, according to the mayor.
Is our largest employer. The supply chain that happens all around this great facility is very important to our city as well. So this is a great announcement. There would have been a huge hit. We had concerns about that, and OPG was a great partner in regards to helping us with an economic study that looked at what would happen. So we're delighted by this news today.
No, not everyone's delighted, Hillary. We will be watching for reaction from various groups about this. Already, I do have a statement from Greenpeace, and in that, they're saying they think it would have been better to be investing in renewable powered energy systems of the future rather than pouring billions more into rebuilding nuclear reactors long past their best before date. That's a bit of a statement that I was sent by Greenpeace, and again, we'll be tracking reaction to this big announcement.
Okay, Megan, thank you for this. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick for us. We're going to stay on this story. I want to now bring in Akira Tokuhiro. He's a professor of energy and nuclear engineering at Ontario Tech University. So, Professor Tokuhiro, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with your reaction to the province's plans to refurbish the Pickering nuclear plant. Does this make sense to you? Is this a good idea?
Yeah, no, it makes tremendous sense. It's great news. For me, as a professor, my concern is how we get to net zero or lower carbon, as a society. So it's great news. Let's use what we have today for a little bit longer so that we have the time to make decisions. So that's the bottom line for me.
For a little bit longer, it sounds like 30 years. That's what a little bit longer is going to mean here. Can you break down this process for us, exactly what this refurbishment process is going to look like? It sounds like there are 4 units that they are going to be refurbishing. Help us understand what goes into that.
Yeah, so it's I'll speak in terms that the general public may understand. It's a major tune-up, or it's a major component replacement. That's the term MCR that's used at Bruce Power, but a refurbishment is replacing the large parts of the reactor so that it works after the refurbishment as if it was new again, right, for another 30 years.
And we heard there a moment ago from my colleague Megan that there's no final price tag on all of this, but they have earmarked $2 billion just for the initial phase. Does that seem like a good use of money for you, of funds to be refurbishing this older plant versus building another one?
Yeah, because Ontario has already spent the money to build Pickering A and Pickering B. And they're operating well, and we have the engineers and the professional workforce. So it does sound like a lot of money, but as I said, it's for another 30 years, and let's spend. It's a major refurbishment, right? So let's spend the money now, because we certainly need the time as society to get to a much lower carbon economy of scale.
And talk to us about that, about what role nuclear power is going to play in a net zero power grid.
Yeah, so I like to say, I like to differentiate between 2030 and 2050. So I always say transition to 2030, transform to 2050. And what that really means is that we need the time, the next 20 years or so, to transform gradually and stepwise and methodically our society to a more, electricity-driven, low-carbon economy. And we need the nuclear power now, especially in the next, to 2030. We have it all over the world, so why not use it? We know it's low carbon, or if not no carbon, actually. So let's use it and see how much progress we can make in terms of getting to a lower carbon economy.
Do you think that this investment goes far enough, or are we going to need a lot more of that, not just in Ontario, but across the country?
Well, Ontario is one of the great things about Ontario is that it has a world-class low carbon intensity at the moment, right? It can compete with, some of the Scandinavian countries that have low carbon footprints. So, and we still have the transportation sector and some of the heavy industry sectors to decarbonize, right? So, is it a good investment? I would say yes. It can put us on a world stage for how to get to low carbon economies of scale.
Okay. Thank you. We do appreciate your time today, Professor Tokuhiro.
Thank you.
Akira Tokuhiro is a professor of energy and nuclear engineering at Ontario Tech University.